the two sides have agreed to sign or to implement a truce agreement. What is South Africa's reaction to the latest development in relation to that truce agreement?
Sophie, it's a development that President Ramaphosa greatly welcomes. It's a development that is consistent with the action that the president has been calling for, that we have, as soon as possible, a humanitarian ceasefire so as to alleviate the levels of distress that people who are injured, people who are in hospitals, families who are in need of food and water, are able to access all of those amenities and those necessities. It's a development that we recognize as quite key, and it's a theme, it's rather a development that aligns very well with the theme of yesterday's gathering of BRICS leaders, who all called for a ceasefire and a humanitarian ceasefire and a focus on reaching those who are in need. We therefore commend the state of Qatar, the United States government, as well as other parties who have been quite instrumental in arriving at this point. It is our wish that this ceasefire can be extended and that it can see the revival of the peace process, which will ultimately deliver us to the desired two-state solution, and which will also see the ultimate end to this devastating violence.
Israel is adamant that this is not a permanent solution or measure. They will still go back and hunt Hamas, and therefore it doesn't really resolve the problem. How do we ensure that this does hold, but it does translate to a permanent ceasefire?
Indeed, it doesn't. When you have such sentiments being expressed with respect to the continuation of hostilities and the continuation of the war, as I said, it is our hope that this temporary ceasefire could see, one, the international community doubling its efforts to get the parties on the negotiating table. We hope that all parties that are concerned and that are relevant to this whole issue will seek a similar outcome. All we can do as the international community is to continue calling on the parties to explore a path to peace rather than a continuation of hostilities. It is imperative for the stability of the region, as well as for peace between Israel and Palestine, that negotiations resume. There can only be peace in that region once we have a free, independent state of Palestine alongside a peaceful state of Israel. Outside of that, we do not see how peace can be achieved.
Let's look at the BRICS yesterday. The Prime Minister of India didn't participate. Yes, there was a Foreign Affairs Minister. But to some people, such an important matter, having such a strategic country not represented by the head of government, it's worrying. And today now you have the G20, you have China not being there in terms of head of state, and also President Ramaphosa, we have Minister Pandor representing South Africa. How do you ensure that these different groups around the world work together? I mean, earlier when the Secretary General of the United Nations was in South Africa during the BRICS, he lamented the fact that the world is drifting apart, and therefore these groups must not ensure or create an environment where divisions continue.
Indeed, Sophie, it's always desirable that when you have a gathering of heads of states, all the heads of states are in attendance, but it's not always feasible and it's not always possible. It does not take away the importance and the significance of that particular gathering. The commitments that the ministers of foreign affairs who represent their respective heads of states make, they do so with the mandate having been secured from their governments as well as from their heads of states and governments. So that should not distract us away from the substantive issues that are discussed, as well as the broader declarations that are agreed upon.
Finally, let's look at Parliament yesterday. That motion going through, now it's up to government as a different arm of state to implement. Many people are saying it was a waste of time. Yes, Parliament has done this, but there's going to be a resistance from government.
Well, Sophie, we first appreciate and note with a great deal of appreciation the advice that Parliament has advanced to the National Executive and to the President with respect to our diplomatic relationship with Israel, in particular the status of the Israeli embassy in South Africa. As you will know, the President and Cabinet are engaged on the matter. You will also know that it is an issue that remains in the purview and sole responsibility of the National Executive, namely the President and his Cabinet. The President will take a well-considered view alongside his Cabinet. He will consult both domestically as well as externally, consulting key partners such as Egypt, who are on the ground and who are closer to events as they're unfolding, the likes of the states of Qatar, which we revisited recently. There are a number of considerations that have to be looked at with regards to this issue. We understand the motive behind the motion. This is a very difficult issue. Palestinians have been living under occupation for more than 6 decades. Various international bodies have recorded the apartheid, devastating apartheid type of living that Palestinians find themselves subjected to. So it's an issue that the President will take quite seriously. It's an issue that will be looked at comprehensively in terms of our relationship with Israel, both in the short term and in the long term. The President will also look at what will a decision mean with respect to South Africa's participation in any future peace process. As you will know, South Africa is often sought after to participate or share a perspective or an experience with respect to various peace processes that are around conflicts that are taking place around the world. So there are a number of issues that will have to be considered, notwithstanding the advice that we've received from Parliament and notwithstanding the fact that it is indeed a matter that remains purely in the purview of the National Executive.